Today I'm going to be speaking with Pat Ryan, the chairman and CEO of Ucore, about some very interesting new developments for his company. Pat, how are you?
Hey, great, Jack. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Pat, I, I, two recent announcements by Ucore intrigued me. One is that you've produced a 99.9% dysprosium compound as a sample for a potential customer. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually, we produced it for a number of customers, Jack. 99.9%. The market for dysprosium, a heavy earth, of course, is typically 99.5% in a non-military application, but we produce it 99.9%. And we're sending it out to customers in Japan, magnet in particular, in Japan, South Korea, electronics, Europe, as well as the US, with a number of up-and-coming players.
Well, I want to congratulate you because, quite frankly, that is the first time in my working life I've heard that anyone has produced 99.9% dysprosium except as a laboratory exercise. So I think you're actually leading the pack right now.
You know, that's a key distinction. It was not a laboratory development at all. It was real-world ionic clay. We had 2 tons of concentrate. We ran it through our RapidSX demo plant in Kingston, Ontario, Canada, which is, close in replication to a commercial plant. We ran it through all its paces and did what that commercial demo plant does best, and that's produce final product, final oxide product that customers can actually qualify and look to buy when the full-scale commercial plant comes on in Louisiana.
Well, and I didn't mean to imply that it was a laboratory experiment. I'm saying that other than you, no one has ever done this except as a laboratory experiment, and which are very limited in quantity output. So again, congratulations. Second, it's my understanding that you are working with Sumitomo. Can you expand on that? What is your relationship with Sumitomo?
Yeah, we announced a relationship with Sumitomo in mid-June, and a lot of people didn't perhaps get the significance of it, but that relationship took well over 2 years to put in place. A lot of back and forth. As you know, the Japanese, Jack, are very careful about what they do. And in Sumitomo, you'd know this for your history. I think you're very skilled in the Japanese market. Sumitomo Metals were actually the part of the inventive team for rare earth permanent magnets, which turned into Proterial and Shinetsu. But Sumitomo is very much integrated the entire rare earth supply stream. So the deal we worked out with Sumitomo is one where they're bringing Ucore feedstock for processing and refining for oxides, saleable oxides in Louisiana, and we in turn are producing or taking those oxides, providing them back to Sumitomo, or providing them back to identified Japanese magnet makers, and a whole list of identified Japanese industrial companies that have rare earth needs, from yttrium to dysprosium to neodymium, praseodymium, and so it's a very unique situation. It's a feedstock coming in, real customers at the end of the day. I think I said recently that in the last 2 years with Ucore, it's probably the most significant thing we've done, because the Japanese don't do things like this. There's a lot of due diligence, a lot of careful thinking, and they studied our processing platform, RapidSX, and what we were doing over and over and over and over, and making visits to Louisiana and visits to Kingston, and speaking with all the scientists and chemists, and they landed on this is the right way to go forward. I liken it back to 2010 when the Japanese were under an issue of national security, and they had to find new inputs because the pressure China was putting on them. And in that world, they got involved with JOGMEC, and JOGMEC, propped up Linus, and Linus has been able to provide some of what Japan needs. And here we are in 2026, essentially, 16 years later, and Ucore has become that choice. So yeah, very, very substantial.
Well, to be honest with you, Pat, I have nothing to add to that. That's a very good summary of what's been going on, and it shows that your perseverance in Ucore is paying off now. So again, I congratulate you. Let's switch topics a bit. Now that you've done this, what's your timetable on that Louisiana operation?
So we're starting with what we call Machine A, which is the very first machine that is funded by the Department of Defense or Department of War, whoever it's being looked at. And we had a press release come out recently that talked about the optimizing of the Louisiana plant. And as we ran material through the Kingston plant, we learned a lot about processing. Because at the end of the day, this is all about processing very difficult, complicated chemical processing. And in doing so, we realized that first machine, quote unquote, RapidSX machine that had 64 stages planned was really best suited at 118. And that was because of a need by the US government, by industry, to not just bring the heavy and light rare earth our way, but also samarium and gadolinium, which are really in scarce supply. So we optimized and redesigned the plant and redesigned that first machine. So by the end of 26, we'll be starting to put commissioning pieces in place for that first machine. And by the first part of 27, we'll look for that machine that can now make 7 different rare earth oxides to be coming on stream in the first half of 27. And then we'll add 2 more machines to it to make the first production line. That first production line will generate about 3,600 TREO. The machine A, as we call it, will generate 600 tons TREO, which is enough to address the urgent need put out with us from the Department of Defense for samarium gadolinium, as well as industry saying, help, we need help. And so we're doing that. So timing wise supports what customers need. And we've had to change that recently. And then I know, Jack, you're a big fan, but at the end of the day, you've got to service customers what customers want. My background, of course, is automotive, so I'm very much dialed into when are our PPAP dates? When do we get dialed into having final qualified processes that the automotive or other manufacturer, magnet and otherwise, electronics can sign off on? So to your question, starting commissioning by the end of 26, 27, we're into that machine A, and then by end of 27, we've got our first production line in place.
Well, you've in the horse race, you're clearly leading, and I'm very impressed by the progress you've made, and I know how hard you've been working on this, and I can only congratulate you. And you're closing a gap, a real gap in the North American and Western non-Chinese supply chain. So good luck to you, and I I don't know if my heart can take any more of these announcements from you. Thank you, Pat. Thanks for the update.
Yeah, thank you, Jack.